No, it's a singular honor to be able to introduce my son and have him speak in our own community. Certainly didn't think that would ever happen as we were raising him, but here we are, and we're so pleased. I'm going to tell you a story about raising him that actually does prove that this could happen. But what I want to say is he's one of 6 beautiful kids, and Gretchen, could you take a stand? This is the woman who gets the credit for bringing 6 beautiful children into the world. And where's number 6? Here's 6. This is Faith Bruner. She is the publicist for Government Accountability Institute in Tallahassee, where Seamus is executive director of research. The story about Seamus. He was about 3 years old. We were walking in a mall, just kind of, it was window shopping, because when you have that many kids, that's all you do. And the kids loved it. Well, we're walking by Spencer Gifts. Anyone remember Spencer Gifts? All right. Well, they had a demonic mask for sale in the window. Seamus is walking by. He's kind of holding my hand. He's sucking his thumb, and he stops. And he shakes my hand, and he goes, "That's evil." And I'm like, "That is evil. Very good." Well, he's identified evil at the age of 3. He's still identifying evil, and he's fighting it. And with that, would you give him a warm welcome, Seamus Bruner? Do you want to hold it?
Yeah, I'll hold it. Well, thank you. Thank you. You can just stay right there. No, just kidding. Wow, it's such a pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you so much for coming out. I didn't expect such a big crowd, and it's a testament to CDF and the work that Jack and all of the CDF folks are doing, that you got a crew this big. A little bit about me. Does anybody here know who Peter Schweitzer is? Yeah, I've worked with Peter Schweitzer since 2011, providing research and support for his books like Clinton Cash and Secret Empires, and recently Red Handed. And so if you know Peter Schweitzer, you know our motto is to follow the money. And that's what I do. I crunched the numbers. I took all the Clinton Foundation spreadsheets and put them into the 990s from the Clinton Foundation, added up all the donations, and eventually found out that Hillary Clinton is crooked. Go figure. But the pandemic was really a wake-up call that there's this class above the politicians, and that the politicians are really sort of puppets exerting the will of what I call the Controligarchs. And you probably haven't heard that term before tonight, and it's a term I coined, and it's a very simple definition. These are the oligarchs, the billionaires and bureaucrats, plotting and scheming to control and dominate every aspect of your lives. It's trademark. James Bruner Sr. handled that. But the number one goal of the Controligarchs is to transfer, and this is really kind of a spoiler alert. Some people ask me, like, why is there chaos going on? Why is there immigration, just unfettered illegal immigration through our southern border? Why is there inflation? Why is there so much crime in our cities? All of this chaos that you're seeing every day is actually part of a carefully constructed plan, and the number one goal of the characters in this book is to transfer power away from you, away from your country, away from every other country, into international institutions controlled by them. And so they don't want you to be free. They don't want you to have control. You don't have any control over them. They're unelected and therefore unaccountable. This is organizations like the World Health Organization, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum in Davos. Has everybody heard of Klaus Schwab? You will own nothing and be happy. Yeah, he's a bad dude. So I'll tell you the story of the Great Reset. A lot of people have maybe heard the term Great Reset, and people talk about it as just kind of this fill-in, catch-all phrase for some of this chaos that's going on. But I'll give you the specifics. In July 2020, so we're not very far into the pandemic at this point, and everybody's scared and wondering if you're going to die if you get COVID. And in July 2020, this guy, Klaus Schwab, he comes onto the world stage. Before that, most people had never, ever heard of him. And he gets up in front of the microphones and he says, we need to prepare for an angrier world. There's going to be a lot of chaos. He predicts what's happening right now. And you see the chaos in places like Ireland and all around with the migrant crises and the joblessness and the businesses that got crushed. And while we were all locked down, they were all getting very rich. But they weren't just getting rich, they were taking control of key industries. And so Klaus Schwab lays out what those key industries are. He says, but don't worry, the Great Reset has a light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to build back better to a greener world. And you started to think to yourself, well, what on earth does a virus have to do with climate change? And he was giving you a little hint that they're going to take control over the energy sector using climate change and the food sector using climate change. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the other thing he said is we need to digitalize everything. One of these things that's going to happen after we get through this Great Reset. And we're now in the Build Back Better phase now. They flipped off the economy. They turned it back on, and a lot of businesses were crushed. But companies like Amazon and Facebook and Microsoft got a whole lot bigger. But digitalize everything. What does digitalizing things have to do with a virus? And there's a number of things that they're digitalizing. They're digitalizing education. They took your kids out of school, and then they created this learning from home, and now they've digitalized social emotional learning. Has everybody heard of social emotional learning, SEL? Well, they've now digitalized that, and they're putting it onto laptops and making videos. And just by the way, on social emotional learning, it's an intentionally vague term so that educators can't really describe what it is. But essentially what it is it's doing away with reading, writing, arithmetic, the things our kids need to know, and replacing it with diversity, equity, and inclusion education. And so it's effectively brainwashing, and it's an intentionally vague term so that they can bring in these untested, unvetted nonprofits into your child's education and distribute unproven curricula. And so that's a big problem. We can talk about that too. But in addition to turning everything green, digitalizing everything, there's also this thing Klaus Schwab calls the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Has anybody heard of the Fourth Industrial Revolution? Artificial intelligence, robotics. It sort of sounded like science fiction back in 2020, but now you see it everywhere. You see AI everywhere, ChatGPT, there's new tools. And what that's coming for is your jobs. Even you may think now I'm close to retirement, I'm pretty safe here, but if you still have 10, 15 years of work left, your job is not safe. And we thought, oh, maybe 10 years ago you thought maybe robotics and automation would come for the blue collar jobs. It's coming actually in an inverse for the professional jobs first. So lawyers, doctors, people who work in finance, AI can replace up to 40, maybe even higher % of the workforce. And so what are they going to do with that unemployed 40% of the workforce? They're going to give them universal basic income. And you'll start hearing people calling for a universal basic income more and more. You've maybe heard that term. Has everybody heard UBI? UBI is a trap. A lot of people think that maybe I'll have more time to take up painting classes or cooking classes. No, it's you're going to get about $13,500 per year in universal basic income. That's according to Sam Altman, who has calculated how much people need to live. So it's out of control. And anyway, so these three things. I mean, with the greener, the food takeover, that's in this book. Under the guise of climate change, they want to ban things like cows. Ireland right now is preparing to slaughter cows, and you hear our politicians talking about banning cows, and we'll never let them do that. You're not taking away our precious cows and steaks, but they're going to make it more expensive, and Bill Gates calls that the green premium, where prices have to go up to change your behavior. And so you'll start finding that your T-bones and porterhouse steaks are not $16, now they're $32, now they're $40 to get a steak, and it'll become a delicacy. With the energy, I'll give you an example of how this is going to work and change your life. Imagine you wake up in the middle of the night, it's getting pretty chilly out, you're shivering, you're freezing cold. You go to your thermostat and you try to turn up the heat, but you can't. Your thermostat's been locked. You've been locked out of your thermostat. You can't control the temperature of your home. That may sound crazy or a conspiracy theory to some of you. Just ask residents in Denver, Colorado. They've done that with these smart thermostats that Jeff Bezos is making, Microsoft is making, Google is making these thermostats. And you got to be very wary of them because they'll pitch it to you. Your utility companies will pitch it to you. Like, would you want to save $30 a month on your utility bill? Sign up for the smart meter. And then you don't know that buried in the fine print is, well, if there's a surge because all of the electric vehicles are charging at once, then you might just get locked out. So that's happened in Colorado, it's happened in Texas. Gavin Newsom's doing that kind of thing in California. With the digitalizing everything, I touched on the education. I mean, they're putting all your education online. Teachers are just giving kids laptops now. And we don't know the nonprofits and what they're trying to teach our kids, and they're not asking your permission for it either. And then with health, digitalizing health, Klaus Schwab gets into this too. We're going to need digital IDs so that we can track everybody's medical records. We remember the talk of vaccine passports. We're blessed here in Florida where we didn't have to use those, but I went up to New York unvaccinated, couldn't get into restaurants, couldn't go to any events. That's what they want to do with the digital ID. So Bill Gates is right now partnering with the United Nations to roll out digital ID in 50 countries within 5 years. That's just around the corner. You've got companies like BlackRock and other financial institutions who want to implement this digital ID. And they'll tell you it's for your convenience, right? I don't have a problem, by the way, pulling my ID out. And it's really funny, actually. They don't want to do any voter IDs, but everybody needs to get a digital ID. So the ID is a big thing. And then with the finances, they want a digital, yeah, it's racist, right, to have a voter ID. But everyone else, you'll need a digital ID for everything except voting. And then finances, central bank digital currencies. Some people have heard of these, right? Digital currencies, and a lot of people say, well, I think money, isn't money already digital? I use my tap to pay, my Apple Pay, Zelle. I thought, money's digital. No, this is cashless. They want to go cashless in Europe. A lot of countries are going cashless, and there are plenty of people in the United States are trying to make us go cashless. Well, the thing about a central bank digital currency is that once you go cashless, they can completely wipe out your money. And I'll give you some examples of where this is happening. I mean, it happened with the trucker protests in Canada. They froze their accounts just for protesting. And it's even worse now in Ireland. These rioters or protesters, whatever you want to call them, they think they're losing their country to migrants who are stabbing children. And so they decide to go out and protest. Well, the lawmakers, they're Controligarch-backed Irish lawmakers, they don't just want to stop their ability to talk about it, they want to take their money. So they're making these hate speech laws. They'll throw you in jail for a meme. And by the way, they've thrown people in jail for memes in the United States. Mackey made a meme in the 2016 election, and now he's in jail. And then the January 6th protesters, of course. I mean, well, I won't ask if anybody was at January 6th, but but I was there, and my bank turned over my records to the FBI without a warrant. Bank of America turned over your records, and then AT&T, my cell phone carrier, turns over your geolocation data without a warrant. And so just for protesting, I wasn't in the Capitol, I was just in Washington, D.C., but just for protesting, they're doing this kind of stuff to Americans. So this isn't like, far off in the future, it's happening right now. And so the end game here is a total control via a social credit score, and they'll basically be ranking you with your digital ID based on how compliant you are with the liberal globalist agenda. And I think everyone in this room would have a pretty low social credit score. And so, what do you do about it? You get to the end of the book. I got to the end of the book. I was like, what can I tell people? What kind of hope can I give you? And it took a lot. It took a lot of time to figure it out. And I actually thank Dad for turning me on to an organization like CDF. And the solution is we've got to organize. These guys have been organizing for 50, 60, 100 years. They've got a pretty good head start on us. But Americans don't want to be controlled. We don't want to be controlled. We're not going to be controlled. We're not going to comply. 3 words: don't comply. Do not comply. That's 3 words. And the other 2 is you got to organize local. We got to do everything local. Support your local businesses. Cancel your subscriptions to things like Amazon and Google and Facebook, like, buying ads. If you got a business and you're buying Facebook ads, I know it's hard. They make it really convenient. But buy local radio advertising instead of Facebook ads, or give that money to CDF. And so, with that, I guess we'll start some questions. That's the best thing you can do is act locally, come to meetings like this, bring more people in this organization. Sir? Well, they tell us that basically the end goal is the end to date is 2030. You've heard Agenda 2030, and they've got the Sustainable Development Goals. There's 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and it's all dressed up in sort of platitudes and nice sounding language like end poverty or fix starvation. When they talk about fixing starvation or making food more equitable, they mean taking total control over the food supply. And when they talk about making education more equitable, they're talking about taking full control over the education system. So you go read, I've got the Sustainable Development Goals in that book. 2030 is when they plan to have them all implemented. They're moving fast. I would say like 2025, just to be safe, is when we should assume that they're going to be putting us past the point of no return. So we don't have a lot of time.